Hello again, welcome to another video. Now, in this video, it's going to be another installment of editing motorsport photography. Now, the last episode was just a time-lapse of me editing it, but I think this one I'm going to do a few less images this time, but just talking while I edit it, kind of showing you what I do and stuff. Now, this installment is also going to be a little bit different because now the motorsport season is over, I'm going to be doing kind of a best of 2017 editing motorsport photography. So it's going to be a wide range of events from GT cars at Brands Hatch to British Superbikes at Snetterton and Cadwell Park. Okay, so unlike me, usually the first thing I do first is crop the image to whatever size I intend to use. Now usually this is 6x4, but if I'm putting something to, like, let's say YouTube and that, where it's usually a 16:9 video, I'll then crop to 16:9, but for this it's going to be 6x4. Now then the next thing I do is what I would usually do is have a preset where it sets a certain clarity level, sharpening and whatnot, but I'm going to leave that out for this video, or it's just going to be pretty much me applying the preset and nearly being done with it really. So I usually add into the region about 45-50 clarity. If the image is a bit more hazy, I'll add a bit more. But I used to have a habit of adding 100% clarity and it used to totally just ruin the images, but usually that's something you end up learning through just playing about really. And then I'll usually add contrast because I usually like having quite deep blacks in the image and that. And it usually gives the image quite a punchy look. And then highlights and shadows on a per image basis usually. But I like to keep a lot of dynamic range on my images, so I usually pull the highlights in and bring the shadows out a lot in my photos. And then saturation, I'll add a small amount of saturation, but not too much. And usually vibrance I find works a bit better for the kind of images that I do. Now, composition wise, I don't really have any kind of preferences or rules when it comes to it, it's just really whatever works. Once again, adding the clarity and saturation and vibrance and that, which if I was doing a bit more of a heavy edit, I'd probably bring this into Photoshop, I'd probably edit this here, give it a bit more black, and give it a bit more of a contrasty look up the top, because obviously you can see the grill and that, it's got a lot of contrast, looks very nice. But the kind of the top of the visor and that doesn't look as good. I think something I do quite like doing is kind of trying out angled crops, where rather than car being horizontal and that, you'll bring the car at an angle, which I usually find works quite well. Like this one for example, this works quite well I think. Now, this one was taken at Snetterton, which at this particular corner, the sun is opposite you, so usually it's actually quite hard to get a good exposure unless it's clouded over or getting a bit darker. But if you try and take pictures when it's sunny, you've got no chance. Or you've got to play about a lot with the exposure to get it right, and then play about with it a lot in Photoshop and Lightroom and whatnot. But I think this image just about came out okay. Another thing is Snetterton, you seem to notice that the greens never seem to come out quite right, but there you go. Usually it's solved by just reducing the saturation of the greens really. Now, a few people have asked me what I actually prefer shooting, cars or bikes, which, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say really. Because I seem to really enjoy both, but I'll be honest, this year most of my good pictures have come from cars. So I've got some good bike ones, don't get me wrong, but it just seems for bikes and that I've struggled a bit more this year, I don't know why, but hopefully next year's different. But then again, I say I struggle with the bikes, but this picture here, I really like and I think it's really fantastic. But this one requires a fair bit of work due to the fact that, well, this part of the corner you were shooting a fair bit into the sun. So I'm pretty much having to put the sliders up to highlights -100, shadows +100 and try and bring the exposure back. But I think it ends up works quite well actually. Has a very punchy look, I think. I think I was having a good experience at Cathedral Park, especially with bikes. Then again, we've only ever seen bikes there, so I've kind of got used to it and I've kind of learned what works best. But once again, as you can see here, the grass at Snetterton never ends up looking nice. It always has like a bit of a off browny, greeny, I don't know, it just never looks right. Which if you had this in Photoshop, you could probably like colour replace or just colour change the grass to give it a bit of a nicer look, but I never tend to bother. I just down the saturation a bit so it ends up not standing out as much. But it's always interesting to get some paddock photos because I usually try and do something different each time, but it's just something a bit more different compared to the usual kind of panning shots of the cars and bikes going by. Nah, I think that looks better coloured, to be honest. Another thing I like to do is play about with the curves and that to give it a film look, especially with the older stuff. Where rather than having like, well, the curve, you pretty much have an abrupt bit at the bottom for the shadows and then another bit for the highlights, and it gives it this a lot more of a film look, and you can play about with how much you want it to give it that faded look, and whatever works for you really. But I think next year we're going to go to a lot more club racing, which a few of these images from this Aston Martin race day where it was, well, there was an Aston Martin, it was pretty much an Aston Martin meet up and that, around the track and that, but they had loads of different stuff racing, like these Ford Capris, and they were very entertaining to watch. But this is still one of my favourite images of the year, I think, because I got this done as a big 30 by 40 centimetre print and it looks amazing. But I think it's mainly down to the fact that it was taken on a 70-200 2.8 with the 2x converter, so you've got an insane amount of reach and fantastic image quality. But this is just something that my like 70-300 can't do. I think for the most part, I don't really have like a specific editing style. It's not like I have like a preset for everything and just like preset and then I'm done. I usually like to kind of see what works really. It's like the modern cars and bikes, they usually work with a very high clarity, lots of contrast and that. Gives it a very modern punchy look, whereas stuff like classic bikes and classic cars, I find work with kind of that filmy look, a bit more softer look, bit of grain added in to kind of give it that old look. I do quite like this shot though. It's dark now, once again, shooting into the sun, photographer's nightmare. But if I bring back the details a lot and up the shadows, you can see that that wheel there, totally blurred. That wheel there, totally still. Just because of how they go around the corner and they lift the back wheel up, I thought it was quite cool. But I'll be honest, I'm glad when we were at Brands Hatch for the GT cars that we held on into the rain, because it made some quite interesting images, especially with all the spray coming up from the cars. Which is something we usually, any sight of rain, we usually bail out and get back to the car. But it was definitely good going to Brands, sorry? Nah. Can't do anything right today, can I? Cadwell Park for British Superbikes, because you got to see things like this happening when they're going hurling bikes over the mountain. Once again, I really don't like the green. It looks too bright and too saturated. So usually solve that. Just bring the luminance and saturation down, and you solve it. But I did get some very interesting shots around the woodland section of the chicanes and that. With these, because this is a super stock bike, so it's pretty much a super bike, just a bit detuned. But the Aprilia sounded amazing though. But this is one of the ones that I think contends for the best image of 2017. As once again, this one I got printed as well. I think the problem is, because they're moving that fast, getting a good focus point is impossible. So I was pretty much having to focus on the edge of the mountain, because that would be about where they were going to be and hope for the best. The amount of shots I threw away is like ridiculous. But once again, another thing, first year going to see any touring cars, which I was a bit sceptical with being Brands Hatch. It's the last round of the year, so I thought it'd be busy, but it really wasn't, which is surprising. So I think we're going to go to a few touring car rounds as well this year, because they're quite good. It's like just watching basically normal hatchbacks and saloons and that go ridiculously quick. And this was also when I was testing out the new lens, the 24-105 L series lens, which, to be honest, a lot of them were actually taken with this lens. This one wasn't, but a fair few were, because I was going for like very wide angle panning shots, which came out quite well, which you'll see in the next image. Which I'm really impressed with the lens. For the price of it, it's not bad. It's one of the cheaper L series lenses, but it still has very good image quality. But something else to say, also don't be afraid to like try something different, like different cropping and that. It's like usually you'll see them like put the car in the centre of the image and that, so it's obviously main focus, but maybe try something like this where it's near the bottom and that. Once again, the greens are ridiculous in this image. So darken them. Take out some of the saturation, bit of the yellows, because you'd be surprised how much yellow there is in grass. But there you go. And for the final image, probably the last motorsport event of this year, at Snetterton. It was actually quite cold, I didn't enjoy it, but there you go. I got some good images actually, because normally I don't get on with Snetterton, I don't know why, but I actually got some quite solid images this year. But there you go. Okay, that's all the editing done. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting to kind of see how I edit my photos and what I do first, what I do then, and kind of basically how my workflow goes. So before I go, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it, maybe even leave a comment if you have something else to say, and make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!